Want to know exactly how to install a Renogy solar charge controller? Well, here's how. First up, let's take a quick look around the unit. So we've got some cooling fins on the back. We've got your mounting points here, your menu display and the buttons. And let's have a quick look at where we're going to be inserting everything. So on our far left then, we've got the input for the remote temperature sensor. And this is what one looks like. This will come with the kit. So you'll basically insert this end into the input there, and then you'll mount this part onto the side of the battery using something like a sticky pad, and then a cable tie going through that just to hold it in place. Just note though that you can't use this with a lithium battery. You've got like a lead acid battery or an AGM battery, it's fine to use one. PV plus and PV minus, that's the positive and negative coming from our solar panels, so they go straight in there. We've got our leisure battery negative and leisure battery positive here. So they'll hook straight onto our leisure battery obviously, or your bus bar if you're using one of those. And then you can install a load directly into this charge controller. So you've got the negative and the positive side there. I guess this would be useful if you didn't have a leisure battery, but we do have a leisure battery, so we're not actually going to be using this in our installation today. We're just going to be connecting up the PV, the battery, and then this side here, which is actually our Bluetooth sensor. So our Bluetooth sensor is already installed, but again, it will have a little connector similar to this that will just go into this input here. Your leisure battery starts overheating. With the temperature sensor installed, it will pick up on that, and then it will compensate the charge rate accordingly. First up, I'm going to remove this front cover here, and then I'm going to start installing these little mounting brackets. So we'll mount those onto the solar charge controller, and then that will allow us to mount it in situ in the electrical unit. So with the cover off, you can see where we can tighten down our terminals. Just insert the cable into here all the way to the back, and then just tighten down accordingly at the top there. And then we've got a few inputs along this back side. So the input on the far left and on the far right are both the Bluetooth module inputs. Which one you use will depend on which Bluetooth module you've got. So if you've got the BT2, which is the most recent version, you'd plug it in here, which is the RS485 input. And if you've got the older version, it will go into here. So the difference is that the latest version will have a longer range, but you need to just plug it in accordingly. So we're going to install the mounting bracket with it sticking out towards the back, so the solar charge controller actually comes away from the wall. And what we'll do is we'll line up the single hole in the mounting bracket to the single hole in the charge controller, and then just push this screw through. So I now want to mount this inside our electrical unit. We've got a few considerations to make when you're looking for a place. So it needs to be installed vertically. We don't want to install it in a sealed enclosure with a flooded battery, because they do emit gases and there is a risk that they could explode. Lovely. You also want to make sure there's enough clearance and ventilation, so you need at least 75mm of clearance for it to ventilate properly as well from top to bottom. Once I'm happy with that, I can then put it in situ, just make sure it's level, and I can mark the holes with a pencil and then pre-drill them and then screw it into place. I'm just going to prop this up to make it slightly easier to hold in situ. Before we install these cables, we actually need to crimp a ferrule on. So we'll just strip the cable back, and like we've crimped other terminals before, we will just crimp a ferrule terminal on the end. And what it will do is just group together these multiple strands, so that when we screw down the terminal, it doesn't screw down onto multiple strands and kind of split them apart. Instead, it keeps them grouped together, and then we've got a nice safe connection. Hopefully this goes without saying, but just make sure your solar panel cables are disconnected before you go ahead and do this. So I've got my wire stripper to strip the cable first of all. So once you've stripped the wire, don't be tempted to twist the strands. Just keep them nice and straight, and then we can place our ferrule, which looks something like this, over the top. And we can crimp this down using a ferrule crimping tool, and I'll leave a link in the description to all of these. You can see now we've got a nice square crimp, and all of those strands are now compacted together. We can now start connecting up the cables, but it's really important to note that you should never connect the solar panels to the solar charge controller before the leisure battery is connected. You should always connect the leisure battery first. Because I've got isolator switches further down the circuits everywhere, everything's going to be switched off. But once it's all connected up, I will first switch on the leisure battery, let the solar charge controller do its thing, and then I'll switch on the solar panels. We're first going to install the positive from the leisure battery, which is going to go in on the second to right terminal. Just give it a light tug to check that's nice and secure. Happy with that. Now I want to connect the negative from the leisure battery, which is going to be the third from the left. Then we'll take the positive from the solar panels, which is in the far left terminal. And then the negative from the solar panels, which is second from the left. Lastly, I'm going to connect the Bluetooth module, which is just going to thread around this channel here and then into the slot. Okay, now we can replace the cover without losing the screws. As mentioned earlier, you should have isolator switches installed. The switch from your panels must be double pole, and I'll cover that in another video and leave a link for it in the description. But for now, we can switch on the battery isolator switch first, and then the solar panel isolator switch second, and test if it's all working. So while the solar is isolated, you can see we've got this crescent moon here. If I switch this on, you can see the sun appear, and these arrows start to indicate the power is being pulled through the panels. It's quite early in the day and it's very overcast at the moment, but on a good day we should be pulling in quite a bit of power via those 6 100-watt solar panels. Before we call it a day, we need to ensure that the solar charge controller is set up to work with the lithium battery. Each battery type has a different charging profile, so it's important that we set the charging parameters correctly to avoid damaging the battery. From the main menu, we can press the down key twice to reach the settings page. We can then enter the page by pressing the right key. If we use the down key and head to battery type, we can then use the right key to enter and choose that setting. It's currently set to sealed lead acid battery. By using the down key, we can scroll through the options until we get to our chosen battery type, which in our case is Li for lithium. We can then use the right key to confirm our choice. From here, we can now use the down key to head to capacity. Here we can set the capacity of our leisure battery. Use the right key to enter, then use the down and up key to change the parameters. When you're happy, press the right key again to confirm the choice. There are many individual parameters that can be changed, and this could be useful if you're installing a Renogy solar charge controller but not a Renogy battery. Other manufacturers may have slightly different charging profiles that are recommended for their batteries. If that's the case, we could enter these parameters here, details of which should be in the battery's manual. Because I've installed a Renogy battery, the general charging profile for a lithium battery is already compatible, so no further changes are required. You may want to change the under voltage warning and the low voltage disconnect to something a little higher if you're concerned about preserving the battery, but other than that, we can press the left key to exit the submenu, have a browse through the other pages, then press the left key again to exit to the main display. Hope that helps. Let me know if you have any questions. I'll leave a link for all the tools used in the description, and feel free to check out my other videos on all things to do with DIY campers.